What if I tell you, a city built by the gods themselves was torn apart in a storm of fire and betrayal? Eridu, the crown jewel of Enki, the god of wisdom, stood as the cradle of civilization. But when divine egos clashed and forbidden weapons were unleashed, it became a battlefield of unimaginable destruction. This is the story of a city caught in the crossfire, a story of war, sacrifice, and the fall of gods. Will you witness the chaos or be consumed by it? Eridu was no ordinary city. It was the first. Its towering ziggurats kissed the skies, their golden tips glinting with divine energy under the blazing Mesopotamian sun. Its canals, carved by Enki's own hands, shimmered with an otherworldly glow, irrigating the fertile plains and feeding life into the heart of civilization. The hum of advanced Anunnaki technology resonated across the city, blending seamlessly with the chants of priests and the bustling energy of its inhabitants. At the center of it all stood Enki's grand temple, a structure so vast and intricate that mortals could scarcely comprehend its construction. Its walls pulsed with ancient glyphs, emanating a faint blue light as they told stories of creation, wisdom, and power. Here, Enki, the god of wisdom and water, watched over his city, his piercing gaze shifting between the sacred texts and the distant horizon. A subtle unease clouded his thoughts, like a ripple across still waters. For months, the tension among the Anunnaki had grown unbearable. His brother, Enlil, Lord of Command, had grown increasingly ambitious, pressing claims over territories that had long belonged to Enki's domain. What had begun as disputes over resources had escalated into outright hostilities. Whispers of rebellion stirred in the courts of the gods, fueled by rivalries and ancient grudges. And now, Eridu, the cradle of civilization, stood at the heart of it all, a prize too tempting for any faction to ignore. Enki's loyalists had prepared. The city was fortified with advanced defenses, energy shields that could repel the mightiest attacks, celestial drones patrolling the skies, and an elite guard trained to wield weapons forged in the fires of the gods. Yet, Enki knew that no defense could stand against the unchecked fury of his kind. The Anunnaki were beings of immense power, capable of tearing the earth asunder with a single gesture. If war came to Eridu, the city would become a battlefield unlike any the world had ever seen. A deep rumble broke the city's calm, a sound that reverberated through the air like a distant earthquake. The priests froze mid-chant, their prayers faltering as they turned toward the horizon. Traders in the bustling marketplaces paused, their eyes scanning the skies. Even the animals, sensitive to the vibrations of the divine, grew restless. From his temple, Enki felt the disturbance in his very core. Rising swiftly, he moved to the great balcony that overlooked his city. His robes of shimmering silver and blue flowed like liquid light as he stepped forward, his gaze fixed on the horizon. What he saw made his heart tighten. Far in the distance, dark clouds swirled unnaturally, streaked with crimson lightning. They moved with purpose, coalescing into a vortex that split the sky. From the eye of the storm, celestial crafts emerged, sleek and menacing, their hulls gleaming with symbols of rival Anunnaki houses. A deafening hum filled the air as the crafts descended, their engines resonating with an ominous energy that sent ripples across the canals of Eridu. Enlil, Enki muttered under his breath, his voice laced with both anger and sorrow. He had hoped, perhaps foolishly, that his brother would not dare to strike at the city itself. But the sight before him left no doubt. This was no mere incursion, it was an invasion. The temple guards reacted immediately, their movements precise and disciplined. Alarms blared across the city as defense systems activated. Enki's personal guard, clad in gleaming armor infused with divine runes, assembled below the temple steps, their weapons at the ready. Energy shields flickered to life around the city, forming a protective dome that shimmered like the surface of a disturbed pond. "Prepare for battle," Enki commanded, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of leadership. Eridu will not fall without a fight. Yet, even as his warriors rallied, the god could not shake the feeling of foreboding that gripped him. The storm was not just a prelude to battle. It was a harbinger of annihilation. For the first time in millennia, Enki felt the sting of helplessness. His city, his creation, was about to become the epicenter of a conflict that could reshape the very fabric of existence. As the celestial crafts began their descent, beams of energy lanced out from their hulls, striking the outer districts of Eridu with pinpoint precision. Towers crumbled in fiery cascades, and the once serene canals turned red with the glow of reflected flames. Screams erupted from the streets as civilians fled in panic, their cries drowned out by the deafening roar of destruction. Enki gripped the balcony's edge, his knuckles whitening as he watched his beloved city erupt into chaos. "This is only the beginning," he murmured. The first assault had begun, and the battle for Eridu was underway. The serene beauty of Eridu shattered as the first energy beam struck the outer district. A brilliant flash of white light erupted, followed by a deafening roar that echoed across the city. The ground trembled as the tower it hit crumbled like a sandcastle, sending a plume of smoke and fire billowing into the sky. Enki's heart clenched as he stood on the balcony, his gaze fixed on the destruction below. The celestial crafts, sleek and menacing, descended like hunting falcons. Their hulls shimmered with a dark metallic sheen, adorned with glowing runes of Enlil's faction, symbols that mocked the sanctity of Eridu. One by one, they unleashed their wrath, beams of energy carving through stone and metal as if they were paper. "Activate the defenses," Enki roared, his voice carrying over the chaos. Below, the city sprang to life with desperate determination. A network of golden energy shields flared to existence, encasing key structures in protective domes. Automated drones, crafted by the finest Anunnaki engineers, shot into the sky, their sleek forms glowing with lethal energy. The drones engaged the enemy crafts in midair, launching volleys of plasma bolts that lit up the heavens in a dazzling display of firepower. The clash was immediate and violent. Enemy crafts retaliated with devastating precision, their weapons tearing through the drones in a series of fiery explosions. The air grew thick with smoke and ash, the acrid smell of burning metal and stone filling the lungs of those below. Enki descended the temple steps, his divine presence radiating authority. His generals gathered around him, their armor reflecting the fires of the city. General Namtar, his most trusted warrior, knelt before him. "My lord, the outer defenses are failing. Their weapons, they're not of this world. They bear the mark of forbidden technology." Enki's jaw tightened. Forbidden technology, ancient devices locked away by the Anunnaki themselves, deemed too dangerous even for their kind. If Enlil had dared to unleash such power, then this was no mere assault. It was annihilation. "We will not surrender, Eridu," Enki declared, his voice steady despite the storm of emotions raging within him. "Prepare the Leviathan Guard. I will lead the counteroffensive myself." Namtar nodded, rising to his feet. "As you command, my lord." As the general issued orders, Enki turned his gaze skyward. The celestial crafts had begun targeting the canals, their beams vaporizing water and sending geysers of steam into the air. The city's lifeblood was being severed, and with it, the hope of survival for its people. Enki clenched his fists, divine energy crackling around him like a storm. He would not let Eridu fall, not without a fight. A deafening explosion rocked the temple as a beam struck its outer wall, sending chunks of stone raining down. Enki raised his hand, creating a shimmering barrier that shielded his soldiers from the debris. His eyes burned with fury as he turned to face the battlefield. "Follow me," he commanded, his voice like thunder. "We take the fight to them." Enki led his forces into the fray, his form glowing with divine power. In his hands, he wielded the Trident of Abzu, an ancient weapon forged in the primordial depths. With a sweep of the trident, He unleashed a wave of energy that tore through the enemy crafts, reducing them to molten wreckage. His soldiers cheered, their morale bolstered by the display of power. The Leviathan Guard, clad in obsidian armor inscribed with protective runes, charged into battle alongside him. They moved as one, their weapons humming with energy as they clashed with enemy forces. The streets of Eridu became a war zone, filled with the cacophony of battle cries, explosions, and the hum of energy weapons. Above, the sky was a swirling maelstrom of light and shadow. The drones of Eridu battled tirelessly, their movements swift and precise, but they were outnumbered. Enemy reinforcements poured in, their crafts blotting out the sun as they rained destruction upon the city. Enki fought with the fury of a storm, his trident a blur of motion as he struck down enemy after enemy. Around him, his soldiers gave their all, defending their city with unwavering determination. Yet, even as they fought, the odds grew increasingly dire. In the midst of the chaos, a new threat emerged. A massive craft, far larger than the others, descended from the storm clouds. Its hull glowed with an eerie red light, and its weapons bristled with forbidden energy. Enki's eyes narrowed as he recognized the insignia on its side, the mark of Ninurta, Enlil's warlord. "This is it," Enki muttered, gripping his trident tighter. "The true battle begins." The colossal craft loomed above Eridu like a harbinger of doom. Its ominous glow cast long, flickering shadows over the city, illuminating the chaos below. As it descended, the ground trembled beneath its weight, and a deep, resonant hum filled the air, a sound that seemed to reverberate in the bones of all who heard it. Enki stood at the forefront of his forces, his eyes locked on the massive craft. Around him, his warriors readied their weapons, their expressions a mixture of resolve and dread. "Ninurta comes for blood," Enki growled, "but Eridu will not yield." The air shimmered with energy as Enki raised his Trident of Abzu high. The weapon glowed with a blinding blue light, and with a powerful thrust, he sent a wave of energy surging toward the craft. The blast struck its hull, causing a massive explosion that lit up the sky. For a moment, hope flickered among the defenders. But as the smoke cleared, the craft emerged unscathed, its shields absorbing the attack. From its underside, a hatch opened, releasing a swarm of smaller crafts and armored soldiers. They descended upon Eridu like a plague, their weapons crackling with forbidden energy. The defenders braced for impact as the invaders hit the ground with deafening force, their arrival marked by explosions and shockwaves. The battle raged with renewed ferocity. Enki's forces fought valiantly, their weapons and tactics honed through centuries of training. Yet, the enemy was relentless, their numbers overwhelming and their technology devastating. The streets of Eridu became a blood-soaked battleground, with every inch fought for tooth and nail. Amid the chaos, Enki's second-in-command, General Namtar, approached him, his face grim. "My lord, we've received reports of sabotage within the city. Key defensive systems are failing. Someone on the inside is working against us." Enki's eyes narrowed, his mind racing. Betrayal. It was a bitter truth, one he had feared but hoped to avoid. He had always known that the rivalries among the Anunnaki extended beyond the battlefield, infiltrating even the most sacred of spaces. But to think that someone within his own ranks had turned against him. "Find the traitor," Enki commanded, his voice a mixture of fury and determination, "and deal with them." Namtar nodded and disappeared into the fray, his soldiers fanning out to root out the saboteur. Enki turned his attention back to the battle, his fury igniting with a new intensity. He leapt into the air, propelled by a surge of divine energy, and landed in the midst of the enemy forces. With a sweep of his trident, he unleashed a torrent of energy that tore through their ranks, sending bodies flying and leaving a trail of destruction in his wake. But even as he fought, the tide of battle continued to turn against him. The colossal craft unleashed its full arsenal, bombarding the city with beams of crimson energy that obliterated entire districts. The once majestic skyline of Eridu crumbled under the onslaught, its golden spires reduced to rubble and ash. Above the cacophony of battle, a voice rang out, deep, commanding, and laced with malice. "Brother," it called, "do you see now the futility of your defiance?" Enki looked up to see Ninurta standing atop the massive craft, his armor glinting in the firelight. In his hands, he held a weapon of unimaginable power, a staff that crackled with black lightning, its energy pulsating like a living thing. "Ninurta," Enki spat, his voice dripping with venom, "you've brought ruin to our people, to the very world we were meant to protect." Ninurta laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "You speak of protection, yet you hoard knowledge and power for yourself. Eridu's fall is necessary, a symbol of what happens when arrogance blinds even the wisest among us." Before Enki could respond, an explosion rocked the temple behind him. He turned to see a massive breach in the energy shield surrounding it. A group of enemy soldiers poured through, their weapons trained on the sacred structure. At their head was a figure Enki recognized all too well, Marduk, his own son. Enki's heart sank. The betrayal was complete. "Marduk," he called, his voice filled with both anger and sorrow. "Why?" Marduk's expression was unreadable, his eyes cold and distant. "You always chose Eridu over me, father. Today, I choose my destiny." The words cut deeper than any weapon. Enki clenched his trident, the weight of betrayal threatening to break him. But there was no time for grief. The battle demanded his focus, and Eridu's survival rested on his shoulders. With a roar of defiance, Enki charged toward the invaders, his trident glowing brighter than ever. The clash that followed was a tempest of divine fury and raw power, a battle that shook the very foundations of the earth. The battlefield became a maelstrom of chaos, fire, and divine fury. Towers that once stood as symbols of Enki's wisdom crumbled to dust under the relentless bombardment. The canals, lifelines of the city, boiled into clouds of steam as enemy energy beams ripped through their flow. The cries of warriors and civilians alike echoed through the ruins, drowned only by the deafening roars of exploding celestial crafts. Enki's charge through the enemy ranks was a storm unto itself. Each strike of his Trident of Abzu unleashed waves of power that disintegrated the armored invaders, leaving only scorched earth in his wake. His divine aura blazed like a beacon, rallying his soldiers to fight harder despite the overwhelming odds. Above, the colossal craft hovered ominously, raining destruction on the city below. Ninurta's laughter echoed across the battlefield as he leapt from the craft, landing before Enki in a shockwave that shattered the ground. The two gods faced each other, their immense power radiating like the heat of 1,000 suns. "Ninurta," Enki growled, gripping his trident tightly, "this madness ends here." "You speak of endings, brother," Ninurta replied, twirling his crackling black staff. "But it is only the beginning. Eridu's fall will mark a new era, one where your weakness no longer hinders our kind." Without another word, Ninurta lunged, his staff crackling with dark energy. Enki parried the blow with his trident, the clash of their weapons sending shockwaves that rippled through the battlefield. Their fight was a tempest of divine power, each strike a cataclysmic explosion that lit up the battlefield like a second sun. Around them, the battle raged on. The Leviathan Guard fought valiantly, their black armor shining even amidst the chaos. But the tide was turning against them. Enemy reinforcements poured into the city, their forbidden weapons ripping through Eridu's defenses with unrelenting precision. Above the ruins, Marduk led a squad of enemy warriors into the temple itself. His blade, forged from the same divine fire that had birthed the Trident of Abzu, cut through the loyal guards protecting the sacred artifacts. Each step he took deeper into the temple was a step closer to Betrayal's ultimate fulfillment. Enki and Ninurta's battle intensified, their movements a blur of godlike speed and precision. Ninurta swung his staff in a wide arc, sending tendrils of black lightning racing toward Enki. The Lord of Wisdom countered with a sweep of his trident, deflecting the attack and retaliating with a surge of water that coalesced into a raging serpent, its jaws snapping at Ninurta. The serpent struck, coiling around Ninurta with crushing force. For a moment, it seemed Enki had gained the upper hand. But with a roar, Ninurta shattered the serpent with an explosion of dark energy, the force throwing Enki back. He landed hard, his trident skittering across the battlefield. Ninurta loomed over him, his staff raised for the killing blow. "You were always the wise one, brother. But wisdom will not save you now." Before Ninurta could strike, a surge of energy erupted from behind. General Namtar, bloodied but unbroken, charged at Ninurta, his blade slicing through the air. Ninurta turned just in time to block, the impact sending sparks flying. The distraction was enough. Enki reached for his trident, its blue glow reigniting as it flew back into his grasp. With a roar of defiance, Enki rose, thrusting the trident into the ground. A massive wave of energy erupted outward, engulfing Ninurta and his forces. The ground split open, swallowing enemy warriors and collapsing entire sections of the city in its wake. Despite Enki's efforts, the colossal craft in the sky remained an unyielding force. Its main cannon began to charge, a sphere of crimson light growing at its core. Enki's eyes widened as he realized the weapon's intent. It was aimed directly at the heart of Eridu. "No!" he shouted, surging upward with a burst of divine energy. His body, glowing with the full power of Abzu, ascended toward the craft. Enemy drones swarmed to intercept him, but with every strike of his trident, he tore through them, leaving only shattered wreckage in his path. Reaching the craft, Enki unleashed his full might, driving his trident into its hull. The weapon's divine energy surged through the craft, overloading its systems. Explosions erupted across its surface as its crimson glow began to falter. But before the craft could be destroyed, a surge of dark energy struck Enki from behind. He fell, tumbling through the sky and crashing into the ruins below. Above, the colossal craft steadied itself, its cannon still aimed at the city. From the temple, Marduk emerged, carrying a glowing artifact, the heart of Eridu's power. With it, the city's defenses failed entirely, the golden shields flickering and fading. Marduk raised the artifact high, his voice echoing across the battlefield. "Eridu falls today. The age of Enki is over." The craft's cannon fired. A beam of crimson energy descended like the wrath of the heavens, consuming the city in a blinding explosion. The ground quaked as Eridu's foundations crumbled, its towers collapsing into the inferno. Smoke hung heavy over the ruins of Eridu, blotting out the sun and casting the once vibrant city in an eternal twilight. Fires raged unchecked among the broken remnants of golden ziggurats and shattered canals, their eerie glow reflecting on the ash-filled skies. The air was thick with the acrid stench of burning stone, metal, and flesh, a grim testament to the wrath of the gods. Enki stood amidst the wreckage, his robes torn and his form battered. He leaned heavily on his Trident of Abzu, its once brilliant glow now dimmed. Around him, survivors stumbled through the debris, their faces blank with shock. Some wept over the bodies of loved ones, while others wandered aimlessly, their eyes haunted by the horrors they had witnessed. Eridu, the crown jewel of civilization, was no more. Namtar approached, his armor scorched and his face grim. "Lord Enki," he said, bowing low, "we have accounted for the survivors. Many of the civilians are lost. Our forces, decimated. What remains of the Leviathan Guard stands ready to follow your command, but we are few." Enki closed his eyes, his heart heavy with sorrow. The weight of his failure pressed down on him, but he forced himself to remain standing. "Ensure the wounded are tended to," he said, his voice steady despite the storm raging within. "Gather what supplies we can. This battle is over, but the war has just begun." Namtar hesitated. And Marduk? He escaped. Enki's eyes snapped open, a flash of fury cutting through his grief. His son's betrayal burned deeper than any wound. Marduk had not only taken the artifact that powered Eridu's defenses, he had delivered it into the hands of Enlil's forces, sealing the city's doom. "Marduk has made his choice," Enki said, his voice cold. "He is no longer my son. When the time comes, he will answer for his actions." The words hung heavy in the air, a declaration of both judgment and mourning. Namtar bowed and retreated, leaving Enki alone amid the ruins. Enki wandered through the city, his steps slow and deliberate. Every corner he turned revealed another scene of devastation. Streets once alive with the laughter of children and the hum of advanced technology were now silent, littered with rubble and the charred remains of the fallen. The canals, once lifelines of the city, were dry, their waters evaporated in the fiery onslaught. He paused before the remains of his temple, the sacred heart of Eridu. The grand structure, which had stood as a testament to divine wisdom, was now a hollow shell. The walls were scorched black, the sacred glyphs etched into them obliterated. Enki placed a hand on the cracked stone, closing his eyes as a single tear traced a path down his soot-covered cheek. "This was not just a city," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the crackling fires. "It was a dream, a promise to the mortals and the gods alike, a place where knowledge and harmony could thrive. And now it is gone." As night fell, the surviving defenders of Eridu gathered at the city's edge, their torches flickering in the darkness. Enki stood before them, his presence commanding despite his weariness. He looked out over the faces of those who remained, scarred, weary, but resolute. These were the last of Eridu, the remnants of a civilization that had been destroyed in a single day. "My people," Enki began, his voice carrying across the crowd. "Today, we have faced a tragedy beyond comprehension. We have lost our home, our loved ones, and our way of life. But we have not lost our spirit. We are the children of Eridu, and though the city may lie in ruins, its essence lives within us." The crowd murmured, their spirits lifting as they listened to their god speak. "The ones who have done this will face justice," Enki continued, his tone hardening. "Enlil, Ninurta, and Marduk believe they have broken us. They see this destruction as their victory, but they have only sown the seeds of their own downfall. I swear to you, by the waters of Abzu and the power of creation itself, we will rise again. And when we do, we will bring vengeance upon those who sought to destroy us." The crowd erupted in cheers, their voices echoing across the desolation. For the first time since the assault began, hope glimmered in their eyes. As the survivors prepared to depart, Enki turned to Namtar. "We cannot remain here. Eridu is no longer safe. Lead the people to the hidden sanctuaries beyond the mountains. I will join you when my task is complete." "And what of you, my lord?" Namtar asked, concern etched into his features. "I must visit the Abzu," Enki replied. "There is knowledge there, ancient power that we may yet harness. If we are to stand against the might of Enlil and his forces, we will need more than courage. We will need the forgotten secrets of the gods." Namtar nodded, though his expression remained troubled. "Be careful, my lord. The Abzu holds dangers even for one such as you." Enki offered a faint smile. "I am aware, but I have no choice." As the survivors began their exodus, Enki stood at the edge of the ruins, his gaze fixed on the horizon. The fires of Eridu burned behind him, but in his eyes burned a fire far greater, a fire of resolve, of vengeance, and of hope. "This is not the end," he said softly, as if speaking to the city itself. "This is only the beginning." And with that, the god of wisdom turned and walked into the night, his trident in hand and his mind set on the battle yet to come. The story of Eridu's fall is only the beginning. What lies ahead is a saga of vengeance, redemption, and the clash of gods that will reshape the very fabric of existence. If you've been captivated by this journey, make sure to hit the like button, share this story with others, and leave your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice matters. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next thrilling chapter. Together, let's spread the legend of the Anunnaki far and wide. See you in our next episode.